After the Buddha passed away, the monastic community turned out to be far less peaceful than many had hoped. Two of his closest disciples, Mahakasyapa and Ananda, found themselves locked in a fierce disagreement over how to interpret the rules of discipline. Mahakasyapa insisted on strict adherence to every guideline set by the Buddha, while Ananda believed the rules should be adjusted according to individual circumstances. What seemed like an ordinary dispute ended up revealing a profound truth that the Buddha had already foreseen. The true meaning of discipline is deeper than anyone imagined. This conflict not only shaped the future of Buddhism, but also left a lasting impact on generations of practice and transmission. In 486 BCE, in the ancient city of Kusinara in India, an elderly man lay quietly beneath two twin sal trees. After many years of teaching, the 80-year-old Buddha was about to enter final nirvana. His disciples gathered around, listening to his last words. No one was more grief-stricken than Ananda, who stood beside him, feeling as though his heart was being torn apart. For 25 years, Ananda had served and learned from the Buddha, who was not only his teacher, but also the pillar of his spiritual life. In the wake of the Buddha's passing, the entire monastic community felt an unprecedented emptiness and confusion. The Buddha's teachings and disciplines had once been their guiding light, but now it seemed that everything was vanishing along with him. Ananda was not the only one who felt a profound sense of loss and uncertainty. Every monk in the community wondered who would maintain the strictness of the rules and who would continue guiding them forward. These questions gradually came to the surface. Some monks began to argue that, since the Buddha was no longer present, perhaps certain rules could be relaxed. Maybe it was possible to adapt discipline more flexibly, depending on the situation. This idea introduced a new tension within the group. Seeing how the community was becoming divided, Mahakasyapa recognized that the Buddha's teachings had to remain pure. Discipline, in his view, was non-negotiable. So he decided to convene a council of monks, both to organize the Buddha's teachings and to ensure the rigorous transmission of the Dharma into the future. During this gathering, Mahakasyapa openly challenged Ananda, accusing him of 8 mistakes. The first was that Ananda never clarified which rules the Buddha meant could be set aside under certain conditions. On his deathbed, the Buddha had hinted that some minor rules could be relaxed if truly necessary, but Ananda had failed to ask for specifics, leaving everyone unsure about what exactly could or could not be changed. Mahakasyapa felt this was a grave oversight. The second issue was that Ananda had once accidentally stepped on the Buddha's robe. Since the robe symbolized the Buddha's sanctity and dignity, Mahakasyapa saw this as a sign of disrespect. The third involved the placement of the Buddha's remains. According to the Buddha's teachings, once he had passed away, his body should receive the highest form of reverence. However, Ananda allowed a group of laywomen to pay their respects first, which caused tears to fall onto the remains, an act Mahakasyapa considered inappropriate. The fourth mistake was that Ananda did not ask the Buddha to remain in this world longer. At the moment of the Buddha's passing, Ananda should have requested him to stay, yet he did not make this plea. Fifth, Ananda had advocated for women to enter monastic life. While his intentions were compassionate, Mahakasyapa felt it went against the stricter rules the Buddha had established, making it a controversial move in the eyes of many. The sixth concern was that Ananda did not always show the proper level of respect when meeting the Buddha. Although he was a close disciple, there were moments where Ananda seemed a bit casual, which Mahakasyapa found intolerable. The seventh criticism focused on Ananda's failure to offer water at the appropriate time, something seen as a basic act of respect in monastic tradition. Finally, Mahakasyapa rebuked Ananda for displaying supernatural powers. The Buddha had always taught that spiritual abilities should not be used for display, because humility and selflessness were more important than showing off any extraordinary gifts. Listening to these accusations, Ananda felt deeply hurt. He explained in a gentle voice that in serving the Buddha for 25 years, he had always held the utmost respect and never meant any offense. As for not asking about the small rules that could be relaxed, he admitted that grief and shock at the time had clouded his judgment. His words were sincere and filled with remorse, reflecting both his enduring love for the Buddha and his inner pain. Still, Mahakasyapa insisted that Ananda needed to make a public confession. He reminded Ananda that these were not merely personal faults but matters that affected the future of the Dharma. Sincerely acknowledging mistakes was the only way to ensure the teachings remained pure. Ananda fell silent. He understood that Mahakashapa's persistence was not personal, but aimed at safeguarding the Buddha's legacy. Though he felt misunderstood, he bowed his head and said softly, "Even though I believe I have done no wrong, for the sake of the Dharma, I will follow the will of the community and offer my confession." The council then continued. Upali, known for his strict adherence to the rules, was chosen to recite the Vinaya, documenting the codes and regulations set forth by the Buddha. Ananda, thanks to his remarkable memory, was entrusted with reciting the sutras. He began each recitation with the familiar phrase, "Thus have I heard," emphasizing that these teachings were based on what he had personally heard from the Buddha. However, as this process moved forward, the split between Mahakasyapa and Ananda over how to interpret the rules became more apparent. Mahakasyapa believed in following the Buddha's original words to the letter, confident that this was the only way to preserve their power and purity. Ananda, on the other hand, argued that the rules should be adapted to individual capacities in changing circumstances. He worried that overly rigid rules might discourage some people or even obstruct their spiritual progress. Ananda felt that the Dharma should be flexible enough to meet the varied needs of all practitioners. Before long, the debate grew so intense that the community seemed to fracture into two camps. One group sided with Mahakasyapa, affirming that unwavering discipline was key to maintaining the integrity of the Dharma. The other stood with Ananda, believing that adaptability could make the teachings more accessible to different types of practitioners. Tensions rose as the two viewpoints clashed. Then Ananda remembered something the Buddha had once told him. It was an afternoon shortly before the Buddha's passing, when the Buddha had spoken to him in private. The Buddha had said, "Ananda, I know your heart is often filled with questions. You will soon face new challenges. After I'm gone, the community will experience uncertainties in different viewpoints. This is natural, like branches and leaves of a large tree that stretch out in their own ways. Even if they look different, they all receive sunlight and rain. The most important thing is not to force every branch or leaf to be exactly the same, but to ensure that each one continues to be nurtured so it can keep growing." At last, Ananda understood that the Buddha had already anticipated the situation unfolding now. When he shared this memory with Mahakasyapa, Mahakasyapa fell silent for a long while. He still believed in the importance of discipline, but he began to sense that the Buddha's wisdom went beyond a strict, literal approach. It was about adapting to various conditions and environments so that anyone could advance toward freedom from suffering. The Buddha's intent was never for the monastic community to become rigid. It was to ensure that every practitioner could find a path suited to their circumstances. As the debate settled down, Ananda and Mahakasyapa found common ground. Their apparent division ended up helping the Dharma evolve in a more inclusive way. A river can flow into the ocean, or it can branch off to nourish farmland. Similarly, there are many ways to practice the Buddha's teachings, but all are meant to lead to the same ultimate awakening. The disagreement between Mahakasyapa and Ananda influenced later developments in Buddhism. Great masters came to realize that preserving the purity of discipline and skillfully guiding beings with flexible methods must go hand in hand. Faithful transmission of the Buddha's teachings requires both integrity and creativity so that the Dharma can effectively benefit everyone. This dispute showed the openness of the Buddha's approach. The same truth can be expressed and understood in multiple ways. What matters most is grasping its essence, not clinging to any particular outward form. It's like climbing a mountain. People can choose different trails, but as long as they head for the summit, they all reach the top in the end. Later Buddhist history confirmed this idea. Different schools arose with variations in detail, but they all kept the core spirit of the Buddha's teachings alive. Far from weakening the tradition, this diversity allowed Buddhism to adapt successfully to various cultures and places. The story of Mahakasyapa and Ananda also reminds us that true wisdom isn't found in stubbornly holding on to one view, but in understanding and accepting the necessity of differences. One passage from the great treatise on the perfection of wisdom uses the analogy of medicine. A good doctor modifies treatment based on each patient's specific condition. Some need strong remedies, others need gentler approaches. The medicine may vary, but the goal, healing, is always the same. In the Lotus Sutra, we read that all things are ultimately beyond words. Mahakasyapa's and Ananda's differing perspectives each serve to help people sense this profound truth, much like fingers that point to the moon. The fingers may not all point from the same angle, yet they guide our eyes to the same moon in the sky. The initial dispute between Mahakasyapa and Ananda eventually gave rise to various schools of Buddhism, but that very development showcased the vastness of the Buddha's teaching. A single beam of white light can be refracted into a rainbow of colors, and in the same way, different interpretations of the Dharma help more people discover its depth. Even revered disciples like Mahakasyapa and Ananda had conflicts, proving the spiritual path isn't always smooth. The crucial lesson is whether we can adopt an open mind toward diverse views. As we study these teachings, we should focus on their central spirit rather than getting stuck on specific words or forms. In the Diamond Sutra, we find the reminder that all conditioned phenomena are like illusions or bubbles, vanishing like dew or lightning. We should view them exactly as they are, fleeting and insubstantial. After much reflection, the tension between Mahakasyapa and Ananda came to a harmonious conclusion. Their differences never blocked the spread of the Buddha's message. Instead, they enriched it, deepening everyone's appreciation of what the Buddha had truly intended.